Okay, good evening. Welcome to the October meeting of the Niskayuna Zoning Board of Appeals. Ms. Shakedi, will you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Mr. Lateif?
Here.
Mr. Dolman?
Here.
Mr. Trimarchi?
Here.
Mr. Daly?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Antonikowski?
Here.
Chairperson Hoke?
Here. First matter on the agenda this evening is a review of the September meeting minutes. Is there any discussion on those minutes? No, having heard no discussion, Mr. Daly has made a motion. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Shakedi, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Lateif?
Yes.
Mr. Dolman?
Yes.
Mr. Trimarchi?
Abstain.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Antonikowski?
Yes.
Chairperson Hoke?
Yes, the motion passes and the minutes from the September 18th meeting have been approved. Will you call the first matter on the agenda, please?
Appeal by Nicholas Daniels, agent for a variance from Section 220-13, Schedule IA, and reviewed under Section 220-16E2 of the zoning ordinance of the Town of Niskayuna as it applies to the property at 40 William Street, Niskayuna, New York, located in the RR Rural Residential Zoning District, to construct a new single-family dwelling partially within the side yard setbacks and exceeding the maximum lot coverage allowed. Section 220-13, Schedule IA establishes a maximum lot coverage for building and structures of 10%, a front yard minimum of 55 feet, and a side yard minimum of 35 feet. As proposed, lot coverage by building and structures is 14%. The house will be 10 feet from the right side property line and 10.1 feet from the left side property line. Therefore, a 4% lot coverage variance is required in both a 25-foot right side setback variance and a 24.9 left side yard setback variance are required. Section 220-16E2 states that if 70% or more of the lots on the same side of the street within 500 feet on each side of the lot have buildings thereon at the effective date of this chapter, 1971, the setback from the street shall be determined by the average setback of the principal building on each lot within 500 feet of each side of the lot. As applied, the average front yard setback along this area of William Street is 8 feet. As proposed, the house will be located 11.1 feet from the front property line, thus meeting the minimum average front yard setback. 11 notices were mailed, 0 responses.
Will the applicant please come forward and state your name and address? I understand that you're appearing remotely, sir.
Yes, my name is Bill Mafrici. I'm with Hirschberg and Hirschberg. Nick was not available today. He had 2 other meetings, unfortunately. So the last time we were in front of the board, Nick was in front of the board, was in February. And at that point, there were some concerns by the board about the feasibility of actually just building the house with the tile field, and because there is no public water or sewer in the area. So in the summertime, July, we met Saratoga County Department of Health on site, did some test pits, percolation tests, and found that a standard system would not be suitable for this site, but a raised mound system would be. So we went and designed a raised mound system to fit within the confines and restrictions for the County Department of Health, and found that we can fit a 3-bedroom house with adequate wastewater treatment facilities for the site. And with that, open it to the board if there are any questions.
Is it Mr. McFrici? Is that correct? Am I pronouncing that correct?
Yes, Mafrici, M-A-F-R-I-C-I.
Mr. Mafrici, can you describe? Okay, you described the septic system, the raised septic system that would have to be installed on this property, and you're requesting 3 separate variances, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and most notably, you're going to require significant setback variances on both sides of the yard, right?
Correct.
And the reason we're doing this is we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole here because of the nature of the septic system that has to be installed in that property, right?
Yeah, the lot, as you're aware, is an existing non-conforming lot. And we're trying to build a single-family dwelling similar to adjacent properties on the site.
And basically, the only place on the property that you're going to be able to accommodate both the house and the septic system that's going to, meet the building code is going to be with the layout that you're proposing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And, have you investigated any other potential layouts of the property or layouts for the house that would reduce the size of the variances that were necessary?
Well, with the initial proposal, we had the house linear and perpendicular to William Street, and that didn't allot us enough tile field space. So we feel this is really the minimum that we can do in order to build a usable house.
Are there other homes that are this close to William Street in the area?
Yes. I believe that the home immediately to the west, or east rather, is approximately the same setback as what we're proposing.
I'll open up. Any other board members have any questions of Mr. Mafrishi?
One question for me. Can you give me a sense of the distance to the nearest residences on either side of the property?
So adjacent, immediately to the east, there's a garage, and the house is probably within 45 feet from our property line. That's on the east. And then on the west, I believe it's in excess of 35 feet. We haven't physically located those structures. We did just the property line itself.
And those property owners were contacted and no comments received from the property owner? Okay.
Sir, are you?
To my understanding,
Yeah, are you aware of yourself any communications with any of the neighbors?
I am not.
Any other questions?
Well, if I just may follow up, about on the back side of the property, you were gracious enough to discuss the east and the west. How about the back side of the property?
I think you're muted.
You're
sir. I
muted,
can't
sir.
hear you.
My apologies. If you don't mind, if I can quickly just jump on Google Earth, I can give you a better idea. I don't want to incorrectly say something and lead the board anyway. Okay, so I would, from number 45 East Street, which is to the south in the rear of the property, that's about 90 feet from our property line to the back. And if I can give you a better measurement to the west, or the east rather, excuse me. The east is about 40 feet. And the west, it's tough to tell where the west is. Yeah, I don't see a property to the west for over 100 feet. So, yeah, okay, that's better than what I was looking at.
And based upon your personal knowledge and enhanced by any resource, in particular one in front of you, could you describe for us the lay of the land, the elevation? In other words, is this generally on one plane, or is there a substantial difference in height, either going to the east or to the west or to the rear of the property?
Yeah, from front to back, right? So from William Street to the rear of the property, it's relatively flat. There's about a 5-foot slope going from north to south, uphill. And then there's a significant drop off on the west. That's about almost 10 feet, if not more. So there isn't much available buildable area than what this actual lot is. And that's probably why it's remained vacant for so long.
Do you have any, should the application be granted? I mean, is there any present intention to supplement the property lines with bushes or plants or trees or other such things that might enhance this, especially in light of the fact that the backyard is essentially this one large, as I understand it, slightly above ground unit?
Yeah, I mean, typically, we provide, a street tree or some sort of landscaping. It's not going to be barren, but because the majority of the rear yard is going to be a raised mound system, it's not necessarily plantable with shrubs or trees. Just roots would impede the system. So you're going to have pretty much like anybody else is a back lawn. I would presume that the contractor is going to do some foundation plantings typically, and make it a nice looking house.
With the raised mound, could you give me a sense of the height of the raised mound, and could you discuss, to the best of your ability, whether the raised mound would call for, in nature's way, to have water running off to the side onto the adjacent properties or the rear property?
Yeah, well, typically, the way we have it designed and the way it's required by the health department is that water gets diverted around the system. So the mound is going to be between 2.5 and 3 feet high in the center, and then there are diversion swells on the east side to divert drainage to the roadway.
All right. How about on the western side and on the rear of the property?
Similarly, the western side drains towards the west, and yeah, the mound system requires diversion trenches to bring the storm drains around to the building.
Thank you.
Mr. Mafrici, how many other mound systems are in the immediate vicinity of the property in question?
I do not know that. I'm not quite sure what the adjacent.
Do you know what the neighboring septic systems are?
I do not know that either. No. I mean, I would presume they're the same age as the houses that when they were constructed. I
Besides,
don't know.
yeah. Besides the immediate neighbors, is there any visibility of the mound system from William Street going up towards the circle? Can you see it from that location?
No, it's a very, the side slopes on the mound system are 1 and 3, 1 on 4. It's a general slope. It basically, if you do see it from the roundabout, it's going to look like, a lawn. You're not going to be able to identify it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
You've got one more. Are any precautions being made on the west side of the property to prevent stormwater from running off onto the property to the west? It looks like there's a pretty substantial slope there, and adding this amount of impermeable surface may result in some flooding downhill. Are any measures being taken to prevent that?
Well, everything that's impervious is from either the driveway, which is only 20 feet, and roof drainage or gutters. Anything in the rear is pervious or grass lawn. So the drainage is being maintained in the manner as which it sheets now. Typically in a residential house, you'll have gutters and direct them around the house and towards the street. So other than, those sort of grading implements, we're not proposing anything different.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Dolman.
Sir, my primary concern here is environmental. The proposed property is near a river, which the wastewater would be a concern for me there. Also, river water has been known to rise. And I would hate to hear that there was a concern about wastewater flowing onto neighbors' properties in the event of a flood event. So can you just, I'm not a septic expert by far. So can you just tell me what mitigations have been put in place for those concerns?
Well, just the fact that a wastewater, subsurface wastewater treatment plant has certain regulations that Department of Health is going to require. The system works with evaporation and transpiration, which means as the sewage comes in, and only the effluent after a septic tank, which collects the solids. Part of that effluent, when it reaches the tile field, gets evaporated, and then the other part goes through the raised soil media that we're putting in place. Part of the design was that a raised system is allowed to be put on soil that is not permeable except for the first 12 inches. And that's what we have here. And that's the need for that raised bed system. So the effluent's going to be discharging through 2 feet or 48 inches worth of material, and then naturally grade into the topsoil layer that was perked and observed by the Department of Health. I hope that helps.
So were the specifics of this property and its proximity to possible floodwaters part of the design specifications?
Correct. There's regulations 100 foot from a drainage course. There's regulations to have offsets to the property lines.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is all conforming to the current regulations.
All right, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions from the board? Having heard no other questions from the board, is there any members of the audience who wish to be heard for or against this application? Having heard none, is there anyone on the board that wishes to make a motion motion relative to this application? Having heard no motions, I will make a motion that we approve this application. I do note that the applicant did, upon originally submitting their application, go back and verify what we had suggested the applicant was important to the board in terms of verifying the nature of the septic system that was going to be required at the property. So I appreciate the fact that now the application is complete and we can take a reasoned view of what is intended for the property with the raised mound system. When you look at the criteria that we're looking for to determine whether to approve the application, this is a unique property in a unique part of town with lots of non-conforming properties. And it is an environmentally sensitive area. And I take it from the applicant that the environmental sensitivities of the property have been contemplated in the site plan. I don't believe, because of that, I don't believe that there's any other alternatives to the plan that's been contemplated. I don't believe, given the nature of the property and the fact that there are other non-conforming properties in the immediate vicinity, that the variance will produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. This is a substantial request, given the extent and nature of the variances. But I believe that again, for the reasons stated, the applicant has attempted to mitigate that criteria. Whether the variance will have adverse physical or environmental effects on the neighborhood or district, again, for all the reasons I previously stated, I don't believe that is the case in this particular situation. Is the difficulty self-created? All of these difficulties are self-created to a certain extent, given the fact that the applicant, when they purchased this property, likely knew of the difficulties in constructing on this particular lot. But that is not determinative, and weighing those factors, I move to approve the application. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman, for
Motion-
all the reasons stated.
A motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Shickety, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Latif?
This is, we appreciate you coming back and explaining about the septic tank, but for me, this property, it is undersized. And if we go back to non-conforming, that was before 1971, and this is to approve this at this time. For me, it's very difficult. I think it's not suitable to build on that property. And I think the request is very substantial. And I also think this is self-created, even though the applicant did a good job trying to come back and lay out and talk to the Department of Health, et cetera. But for me, I'm going to vote no on the motion.
Mr. Dolman?
I'm going to vote yes for the reasons stated by the chair.
Mr. Trimarchi?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes,
Mr. Green?
This one was a close one for me. In the vernacular, I'm not always, under circumstances like this, comfortable packing in sardines. However, the applicant has, in my estimation, adequately addressed what I understood to be the board's primary concern about the system in the backyard. I also note that it's important for me in this instance that I do not hear any objection from any of the neighbors or anyone in the neighborhood. Thus, with that, and for the reasons stated by the chairman, close call, but I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. Antonikowski,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson Hoke.
Yes, your variance has been approved 6-1. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kitty, we call the next matter, please.
Appeal by Raymond Smith for a variance from Section 220-18B3B and Section 220-18B1 of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 850 Oregon Ave, Niskuna, New York, located in the R2 Medium Density Residential Zoning District, to maintain a 12-foot by 28-foot carport partially within the rear yard setback and exceeding the accessory structures area of coverage allowed. Accessory structures, Section 220-18B3B states that the required side and rear yard dimensions for major accessory structures shall be the same as applies to the principal building. Major accessory structures are defined as detached accessory buildings or other structures in excess of 120 square feet. The carport at 336 square feet is a major accessory structure. Section 220-13 Schedule IC establishes the rear yard setback at 20 feet. As proposed, the pole barn is located 10 feet from the rear property line at the closest point. Therefore, a 10-foot rear yard setback variance is required. Section 220-13B1 states that the total area of coverage for accessory structures shall not exceed 50% of the allowed area of coverage of the minimum permitted lot size in the R1, R2, and R3 districts, or actual lot size, whichever is smaller. As applied, the allowed area of coverage is based on the minimum lot size and is 1,350 square feet. As constructed, the carport, coop, and existing pole barn covers 1,562 square feet. Thus, a variance for 212 square feet of accessory structure coverage is required. 14 notices were mailed, 1 response.
This is an email from Emily Wallen. In lieu of our attendance, 7 p.m. doesn't work with baby toddler bedtime. We would like to submit this letter to become part of the permanent record regarding Ray Smith's variance request for 850 Oregon Avenue. Ray Smith and Michelle Cable are our across the street neighbors and have been for the past 6 years. In that time, we have gotten married, weathered a pandemic, and had 2 children. Through it all, they have been the very definition of good neighbors, which is an increasingly rare concept in today's world. Their contribution to our street, our area, and our town are immeasurable. They are one of the main reasons we plan to stay in our house long term. Their chicken coop and chickens provide endless entertainment and lessons in responsibility to our toddler who visits them nearly every day. The resulting eggs are shared far and wide, most notably with 2 octogenarian neighbors that then turn those eggs into baked goods, which get shared even further among neighbors. Their garage houses tools and equipment that is shared generously without hesitation. It houses decorations that bring so much cheer to our street, decorations that are so well known, people from other areas come to visit just to enjoy them. My children and I use their yard more than we use our own and are welcomed doing so. These are just small samplings of examples showing how their outbuildings are used to benefit everyone around them. They did not ask us to write this letter. We weren't even aware of the hoops they have been jumping through, and it was only brought to our attention by a letter in the mail asking for comments on their variance application. We are in full support of how they are using their property and land and truly hope that they will not be required to change anything. I can't help but think they may be targeted because of Ray's position with the town, which is just not fair. Ray has the utmost integrity in his role, not even plowing his own driveway with the town plow truck, which I would do if I were him. Drive for 5 minutes in any direction, and you will see homes in Niskuna that are out of compliance. It is not fair to enforce a rule selectively. If Ray and Michelle are going to be penalized for this, it needs to be something that is enforced on everyone equally. Also, from what we understand, Neighbors were consulted when they built their garage, which they did fully consistent with town regulations, another example of Ray's ethical behavior. Surprisingly, we have not been consulted on any other construction on our street, such as a significant addition on a new group home. No neighbors were consulted in any aspect of this, and other neighbors who built a garage in their front yard. We do not oppose any of this, and similarly, there is no reason for Ray and Michelle to jump through hoops for minor issues on their own property. If it is disappointing the town is spending resources on a matter such as this, rather than much more important issues such as excessive speeding on our street, and the house involved in a multiple felony level drug bust that still seems to be in operation somehow. I am confident everyone on our street sees both the speeding and drug problems as much more significant than minor property deviations that are not regularly enforced. Thank you for taking our thoughts into consideration. Kyle and Emily Walwin, 845 Oregon Avenue, Niskuna.
Will the applicant please come forward? State your name and address for the record.
Raymond Smith, 850 Oregon Avenue.
Mr. Smith, I will just note, in response to the letter, you did make the disclosures required under the municipal law, identifying yourself as an employee of the town. I just had a couple questions. Laura, how did this matter come before us? Because everything is currently constructed, correct, Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Smith was doing a lot line adjustment with his neighbor, and the surveyor noted all of the outbuildings on the parcels. And part of the review of lot line adjustments requires us to review all of the information that is given to us.
And-
We are not allowed to ignore it.
And I didn't suggest that. And with respect to just for clarification purposes, because we said that that the carport requires some kind of variance. There is no variance specific to the carport. Mr. Smith could reduce any one of the accessory structures to get down to the required square footage. It wouldn't necessarily have to be the carport, correct?
Correct, but the carport also has a setback variance that he's requesting. There's two.
Okay.
Yeah. So my recommendation to him was because no matter what he does, he's going to need to come to you guys unless he was to reduce one of the outbuildings. He might as well come with where it is
I
situated.
appreciate the clarification. It's now clear in my mind. Mr. Smith, can you tell us a little bit about, and I would concentrate on what you use. Obviously, the carport's, well, it's not so obvious. Why don't you tell us what you use all the accessory structures
So
currently
the,
for?
the carport is off to the side, what I'm seeking my variance for. It solely houses my boat.
And how long has the carport been there for?
2 years.
Okay. And how about the pole barn? What are you using that for?
Pole barn is for storage. I have a couple antique cars in there and my motorcycles.
And how long has the pole barn been there?
I think that's been there 5 years. I came before the board for a variance on that as well.
Oh, you previously came to the board for a variance on the pole barn?
I did.
And what was the nature of that variance?
So the nature of that variance was to keep it in the rear of my lot so it didn't impact my neighborhood. I was able to keep some mature trees to somewhat seclude the building. I tried to use neutral colors so it didn't stand out within the neighborhood, and essentially just try to keep it out of sight.
And with respect to the chicken coop, that's self-explanatory.
For my neighbors to play in.
That
As you
neighbors
heard.
play in the chicken coop? How many chickens do you have in the coop?
4.
Okay, and so it's obviously currently in use. It's continuously in use.
The what?
The chicken coop's continuously in use.
Yes.
Okay. Do any members of the board have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just real briefly, is that your sister that's your neighbor, your mother? Because that was one of the nicest letters I
No,
think I have ever
they're-
heard anybody.
A young couple that moved in across the street from us, and they've been very friendly with us. We've been very friendly with them, and we watched them get married. We watched their 2 children be born, and just
That's
essentially,
great. So thank you for contributing to the community in that way, no matter what.
I learned a lot too tonight, so.
Sounds like you owe someone a bottle of wine.
Certainly some cookies.
Fair enough. The carport that's covering the boat, can
Yeah.
it be seen from the road?
It's between trees and I situated it right next to my pole barn, so it essentially looks like it's part of my pole barn.
Okay.
It's open in the front, it's open in the back, and it's open on the sides. It's essentially just a top piece that covers the boat from snow, rain, and storms.
Okay. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith, is there any way to move back the carport at all to minimize the need for the, oh, no, I'm sorry. That wouldn't help you. There's no way to minimize any of the needs for the variance other than removing some of the structures. All right, Mr. Green.
Yeah, sometimes it's helpful just to flush the record out a little bit. For me, and I'm hoping for other board members. Talk to us about what is behind on the rear of your property. In other words, behind the pole barn, the coop, and the carport. Is it wooded? Is it a hill?
It is wooded. It is a very steep hill. So the hills goes up. It's very wooded between my neighbors that are on Stark Avenue, which is a dead end. I'm essentially aligned with the last house on Stark that is kind of an angle towards Route 7 a little bit.
Yeah.
Very wooded, very brushy. I'm probably at least 400 feet from the back of my barn to the houses on 300 to 400, I would say.
Yep.
There's very mature trees. I bought the piece to the left of me to square up my property from a house on Stark Avenue. That was the lot line adjustment to try to keep mine had a jog in it at one time. So to keep it straight and, to keep the privacy there where that house was being sold. So we knew there would be new owners there. The old owners I was very close with. I maintained the mother's lawn in the back since I've lived there. And they graciously sold me that piece to square me up and, help ease this. Not to put anything on, but just to create a straight line in my backyard.
Very good. And with regard to the view from Oregon Avenue to the area of interest, the pole barn, chicken coop, and the carport, for the record, could you tell us the approximate distance from Oregon Avenue to the rear of your property in the area where you're
I
asking
believe
for
it's
the
200
variance?
and some odd feet to the very back line. So 30, 40 foot shy of that. So that's roughly 200 feet. So my house is situated in the center of my lot, which is up front by Oregon. So I essentially have, 40 to 60 feet of green space on one side and maybe 60 on the other. So this stuff is kind of secluded behind my house. You can see it if you drive by my house and look either side of my house, but it was designed to be out back so that it didn't impact.
No. And I thank you for that. And for the record, I did take a look.
Thank you.
Yep. I was the gentleman standing on the street for some time. So that's,
Oh, you had
Leads
the
him-
hat on. I seen you.
yeah, I know. I know. I know. I get seen a lot at these site visits.
I appreciate you doing
Yep.
your due diligence.
Yep. And I appreciate that. And for the record, if you're standing across the street in the area where the neighbors submitted the letter, favorable letter,
Yep.
what do you see?
Standing from their house?
Yeah, in other words, here's what I'm thinking. Ready? The neighbors across the street love you. It's very neighborly, you can tell. But I don't know that they're going to be there forever. So for the record, I'm just curious, if you're standing on Oregon Avenue across the street and you're looking toward your property and in the area of the pole barn, chicken coop, and the carport, what do you see?
So you would see the front of the building, which is gray in color. The chicken coop is just a natural wood color. And I don't know, I think it's camouflaged pretty good with trees and such. Actually, the house that you parked in front of, my other neighbor is right here, Mr. Moore, which is next door to the couple that wrote the letter in my behalf. Bob actually has right where you parked, probably the best view of my backyard.
Okay. I appreciate your graciousness in responding to my questions to help
I
me
hope
better
Did I
decide.
answer him okay for you?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're good. And it flushed out the record, so thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the board that have questions?
Mr. Chair, I just like to state for the record that in response to some of the concerns in the letter, that we do not selectively enforce any of our zoning ordinances, that this was brought to the attention of the board through a process that's already been noted. So just want you to be aware that you were not in any way hopefully treated unfairly.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the audience that wish to be heard for or against this application? Mr. Smith, why don't you take a seat? And Sarah, why don't you come up to the microphone?
Thank you very much.
If you just do us a favor and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bob Long. I live at 833 Oregon Avenue, diagonally across from Ray and Michelle. I want to say I've been there for many years, and I came here to support them when they asked for the variance for the pole barn. The pole barn is set at the back of their property. It does not bother me at all. Until I saw the drawing on this sheet, if the pole barn, if the carport has been up 2 years, I have not yet seen it, and I go by it 3 or 4 times a day. Ray and Michelle keep their property well, and they're very helpful in the neighborhood. And so I personally want to support it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Are there any other members of the audience that wish to be heard for or against the application? Having heard none, is there any member of the board that wishes to make a motion relative to this application?
I'd like to
Mr.
make, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Dolman?
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion, Your Honor, or your, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
We'll promote you. I would move to approve the variances as requested. I find that the lot layout does not allow these benefits by other means. I don't find that this is a undesirable change in the neighborhood, and this is further attested to by multiple neighbors. I do find that this is absolutely a substantial variance, but I don't see any environmental impact. And while this is self-created, that is not per se determinative. And on the balance, I move to approve the application as written.
Thank you. A motion's been made. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that. Mr. Smith came before us tonight. We asked him quite a few questions on his property. He gave us all honest answers. And he hid nothing from us. So I'll second that under those grounds.
A motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Kenny, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Latif?
I'm going to vote yes. And I remember 5 years ago when he came in front of us and put the barn up, and I think at the time he did a good job presenting what he did, and I think he did a good job presenting to us tonight what he has done, and I vote yes.
Mr. Dolman?
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Mr. Trimarchi?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes, for all the reasons stated.
Mr. Green?
I think it's really important here that we distinguish this particular parcel from other parcels we've had before us. over the tenure of my term, applications for pole barns, chicken coops, and carports. And sometimes the lay of the land really is important. Here, we have a situation where the area of concern truly is in the rear of the property, and on top of that, the rear of the property is trees and vegetation and such, and it's not going to disturb the neighbors on the back, putting it aside for the fact that no neighbors come out to complain. And in fact, that letter from the neighbor across the street is important. While I don't agree with all of the statements contained within the letter, the general tenor of the letter was very favorable, and the fact that a neighbor came out, the one most impacted, the gentleman who gave his position and testimony, weighs very heavily in my mind, and for the reasons stated. In this instance, under these facts, yes.
Mr. Antonikowski,
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson Hoke.
Yes, for the reasons stated. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Your variance has been approved 7-0. Variances. Will the, Mr. Kay, we call the next roll, please?
Appeal by Pranav Balang for a variance from Section 220-4, Section 220-13, Schedule IC, and Section 220-15D of the zoning ordinance of the town of Niskuna as it applies to the property at 220 Park Ridge Drive, Niskuna, New York, located in the R1 Low Density Residential Zoning District, to construct a 16-foot by 36-foot deck partially within the side yard setback. Section 220-13 Schedule IC requires a 15-foot minimum side yard setback. Section 220-15D states that for corner lots, front and yard minimums shall be required of both yards facing the street on a corner lot. Side yard minimum shall be required of the remaining 2 yards. For properties located in the R1 and R2 zoning district, as proposed, the deck would be located 5 feet from the rear property line. Therefore, a 10-foot rear yard setback variance is required. 12 notices were mailed, 1 response.
October 15th, 2024, to the Town of Niskuna Zoning Board of Appeals. We, the below signed, reside at 265 Park Ridge Drive, Niskuna, New York. We have no objection to the variance requested by Pranav Balang in regards to the proposed deck on his property at 220 Park Ridge Drive. Thank you, Jeffrey Bruker, Jeffrey and Elizabeth Bruker.
Sir, will you just state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Pranav Balang, and I reside at 220 Park Ridge Drive, Niskuna.
Mr. Belong, where is the individuals that wrote the letter in relation to your parcel?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't get that one.
The neighbors that wrote the letter in support of your
Yeah.
variance application, where do they live in
They
relation?
live
to you?
across the street from me.
Okay, they live in front of the house, so they wouldn't see.
Yes,
They wouldn't
yeah.
see the.
Yeah, they live in the front of the house.
Okay.
Right.
Just before any other questions, have you spoken with your neighbor that's immediately in the photos looking at the back of your house to the right of your property?
Yes, and they have been very supportive. In fact, my 7-year-old and their kids, they play all the time. So they're actually very excited to have a deck where their kids can also come and play with my kids. Right now, we don't have much of a backyard, so a deck where all the kids can come together and play, and that would be great.
And can you describe, you said you don't really have a backyard. What do you mean by that?
Well, in comparison to others, I only have 21 feet from my to the back of to the rear property, the other person residing. So it's 21 feet. So it's not a big backyard where he can, run around and do stuff.
And the property owner, who's the property owner immediately behind the property?
Behind the property,
Behind the property.
that is, I think that's 216. That's on the, well, there is actually nothing right behind the property. It's actually all empty space because the property is actually the backyard. There is one property on the right-hand side, and then there is another property on the left-hand side, which has a fence so they can they cannot even see the, or the one on the right-hand side is too far away, and their backyard is, our backyard extends into their backyard. So it's actually just open spaces. There's nothing blocking it.
Why did you decide on the size of the deck?
So, we want to put a small table and chairs, and, given that my son, on the side of the house, there is the street, my son really can't do much over there because there's traffic over there. And because it's a corner lot. So this size would be ideal for us. We can put a chair, tables and everything. My son can do some activities, have some friends come over.
Okay, has anybody in the neighborhood expressed opposition to the plan for the deck?
Not at all.
Okay. Is there any other questions for members of the board?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You always may, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Talk to us a little bit about what the deck's going to be made of.
So the deck's going to be made up of vinyl. It's all season. Give me a minute. I'll pull it out. It is going to be made up of vinyl composite planks and pressure treated lumber. The footing form is sonotube. This is all I know. It's going to be made up of, we wanted it to be made up of all season, something that can withstand the snow and, so everything. We don't have to do too much maintenance to it.
And what is the elevation, for the record, what's the elevation of the deck? When you're walking on the deck, what's that elevation? How many feet up is it, and how does it relate to the current height of the platform of the stairs shown in your photographs?
Size of the deck, 16 feet from house, 36 wide. Size and spacing. Size of beams, I'm not sure if this is size and spacing of post, 6x4, every 8-foot center. This is the specification that were given to me by my contractor, and I'm sorry, I'm not very well versed with these.
Ready? You don't have to apologize. You're doing your best for me. Ready? Let's put away the contractor specs for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And just talk about the height in relationship to the stairs that are currently there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
I would say it would be maybe about 3.5 to 4 feet.
All right.
Yeah.
And that would be the height of the floor of the proposed deck.
Yes.
So with that in mind, as you're walking out the back of your house through what would appear to be sliding doors,
Yes, there are sliding doors. So
would you be stepping down into the deck, or would the deck be the same level as the
Same
sliding
level.
doors?
It will be the same level.
Are there any other members of the board that have questions?
I'm not clear on the footprint of the deck. Is
Mhm.
it where the ropes are
Yes.
identified in the pictures? that you
Yes,
submitted?
yes. So that's.
So this is
Sir, you're going to have to take a microphone that they can give you if you're going to approach
Okay,
the
sorry.
screen.
You're fine.
So I wanted to have some fluorescent, but I didn't get it. So I just you see these ropes right there. So that's how far the deck extends. From here to here, and then like that.
Okay, so will the back corner of the deck match up with the back corner of the house?
Not entirely.
Okay.
Not
Will it
entirely.
Go that far, or will it go farther?
No, it will not go that far. Yeah.
So it won't go outside the footprint? of
No,
the house?
absolutely not. No.
So in the pictures you've submitted, the vegetable garden, raised bed vegetable garden, that will stay there and it doesn't go that far?
No. And also there is a tree at the back of the house. We're not going to cut that tree. It's going to be the way it is. So there's no environmental damage as such.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
If, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Hold on 1 second. Mr. Daly, do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Daly.
I'm looking at your back of your house now. And your elevation by your sliding glass doors. Elevation, I mean by from the ground
Right.
to finish. It looks to me like that's about 28 inches, 3 foot. So when you walk out of your deck, you're going to walk straight out with any waivers, right? In other words, it's going to be level with
Yes.
the,
With the sliding doors. So we are not going to either step up or step down. It's going to be at the same.
you're going
level.
to level. When you walk
Yes.
out, you walk them straight out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Mr. Green, you had another question?
Yeah, I do. I'm not here to give you a hard time, but I'm wondering, did you give any consideration to perhaps a slightly smaller deck that could still accommodate your desire for a picnic table and chairs? This is a substantial sized deck in my mind.
So with the thing with my job and stuff, I work 12 hours. I'm a pharmacist. When I work really longer hours, and most of the time I leave early in the morning, come back late in the night. So my son, I have a 7-year-old who goes to 2nd grade, and I wanted him to get more area, so that he can play, he can have some friends come over and do some activities. He cannot do that on the side, on either of the sides, because there's really nothing he has come multiple times to me saying, Daddy, everybody has a deck, we should have a deck where my friends can come and play and do something. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put this request and see where it goes, So,
And I absolutely appreciate that. I was just wondering though, all of that being considered, do you think that you might be able to accomplish that by constructing a slightly smaller deck? Because if this application is approved as you're asking,
mhm.
it will indeed consume a large portion of your backyard.
I would say about 3/4, or maybe a little lesser than that. But I mean, we could do with a smaller. But if I get this, then there's more room, do more stuff. Given that that's the only possible place we have, we don't can't extend any further. So yes, to answer your question, we could do with a smaller deck, a slightly smaller deck. Yes.
I appreciate your response.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Just a quick question. Are you gonna have a railing on the deck, like around it? And how high is the railing gonna be? Because you said the kids will be playing.
Yes, there will be a railing, of course. Yes, there will be a railing. Yeah, it will be a 3 feet high vinyl deck rail. That's
3 feet. And are you gonna have any steps to step down to your yard from the back?
Yes, there will be steps to go. The steps would go actually to the side of so when you walk from the kitchen, from our living room / kitchen, when you walk onto the deck, as you walk onto the deck, the stairs would be on the right-hand side, going to the side yard.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you,
Thank
Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions? Is there any member of the audience that wishes to be heard for or against this application? Having heard none, is there any member of the board that wishes to make a motion relative to this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to approve this application. The applicant has demonstrated the needs for this deck, and the property is a little unique back there. We have no complaint from the neighbors. Actually, we have support from the neighbor. The benefit can't be achieved by other means. Even the applicant is willing to make it smaller, but it will benefit him more if it was to be the size that he's requesting. It's not going to cause any undesirable change in the neighborhood. And yes, the request is substantial, but again, this is a unique backyard you have. Would the request have any adverse physical or environmental effect? It will not. And is alleged difficulty self-created? It is self-created, but again, there's a reason why the applicant need this deck. For all these reasons, I approve the motion. Make a motion to approve it.
A motion's been made. Is there a second? A motion to approve has been made. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Motion's been made in second. Ms. Schetti would call the roll, please.
Mr. Lataif?
Yes.
Mr. Dolman?
Yes.
Mr. Trimarchi?
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
I appreciate this gentleman's honesty, but indeed, In order to accomplish the mission of having a seating area in the backyard with a picnic table and chairs together with the other testimony provided, I'm voting yes for the reasons stated.
Thank you.
Mr. Antonikowski?
Yes, for the reasons stated.
Chairperson Hoke?
I'm voting yes. And in addition, with respect to the size of the deck, I would note that it's likely that irrespective of any reduction in the size of the deck, there would still be a need for a rear yard setback variance. So even if the applicant was to reduce the size of his deck, it wouldn't reduce or eliminate the need for a variance. For those reasons, I vote yes, and your variance has been approved 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night, sir.
Thank you. You too. Thank you,
Tell
everybody.
your kid you did it.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, he's going to be very happy. Thank you very much.
My old cane is just wearing off.
All right, then we'll take it under consideration.
Well, thank you, John.
At this time, we're going to do something a little unusual, and I am going to make a motion to take the board into executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 105D, to discuss pending litigation. After the conclusion of executive session, no further business will be discussed by the board. And with that motion,